Welcome to Game Brewery, a podcast about the retro game developers and games. I'm Čestmír Kocián, and I'm here today with Robert. Robert is a game developer and a YouTuber, or can you tell us something more about you?
Yeah, so my name is Robert Doman, and I've been making GB Studio games for about 4 years. GB Studio is a game engine that lets you make Game Boy games. And when I originally started, I was just trying to make web games, which it also does, because I was a really big fan of pixel art. But obviously, over the years, I started making tutorial videos, and now I feel like I'm the GB Studio tutorial guy.
So you have a lot of tutorials on your YouTube channel,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
how did you get to GB Studio? Like, did you play the Game Boy games before, or?
When I was a kid, I didn't really play much Game Boy. I had friends who had the Game Boy, but I played the DS. How I found GB Studio was basically I'd finished uni, and it was obviously during COVID, so I was trying to find a very small game engine that would let me have more fun, and it would be able to take game development a bit less seriously. And obviously on itch.io, the website that we often upload our games on, I found this game engine called GB Studio, and it was perfect. It was drag and drop, it was pixel art, and I made a game in 1 week for a game jam called a Western Ballad, or it might have been a month, but yeah, I made a very small game, and the rest is history, basically.
So you have a lot of games now on itch. I check
Mm-hmm.
it, and you have a lot, but I think you are focusing the most in last few months or maybe even years on only one game, and it's called
Mm.
Take It Racing.
Yeah,
So what is this game? What I saw is very special racing simulator, if I understand it
yeah.
properly.
Yeah, it's not quite a racing game. It's more of like a management strategy game. And I'm currently working on Take It Racing 3, but the first Take It Racing I made in 1 week for a game jam, which is often how I find my ideas. And basically, it was my way of making a racing game in GB Studio without knowing how to make like a 3D racing game or a top-down 2D racing game. I wanted to make a game with stats that you could affect the car's stats, how fast it can go versus how much it handles, and then give the player some creative freedom inside that. And then Ticket Racing 2 was it was the evolution of that, and it was thinking more about buying different cars rather than upgrading cars. And now Ticket Racing 3 is kind of taking it back to changing the cars. So it's a very stats based strategy racing game, basically.
So you need to changing the cars means like upgrading your cars and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. So in Ticket Racing 3, it will be you can choose the body of your car. It's like 1970s NASCAR racing, right? Where there's like only a certain few brands that you can choose from, and then you choose the engine that goes in it, and then you choose the tires that you're using that have different grip ratings, and then you also choose the gear ratio, so you can change the acceleration versus the top speed, basically.
That's very cool. And I saw on your webpage that you have it even on a cartridge.
Yeah, yeah. I managed to set up a website and buy some cartridges from online and flash the game onto cartridges, and I've been selling it that way.
Do you know more people around this Game Boy games or Game Boy development scene?
Well, when I began, there was only a few. It felt like there was only a few people, but it might have been that I just didn't know very many. I remember watching tutorials from Pixel Pete, who makes pixel art tutorials, but also dabbled in GB Studio. And he was the one who taught me how to make games basically in GB Studio. But now the scene has exploded. GB Studio seems to have gone semi-mainstream on the, like the pixel art underground stuff. So there are, I'd say, thousands of people making games for GB Studio, maybe close to 100 who are doing it and making money off of it. I don't know, actually. But there are a good few people who are really good at GB Studio, and I would call them professionals at GB Studio, yeah.
Yeah, we start the same, I think. roughly around 3-4 years ago, watching
Hmm.
Pixel Pete
Yeah.
as a tutorials. Yeah, I think we started the same.
Probably, yeah. Yeah, can you tell me a bit about your game? I know that you did an Indiegogo thing, so that's something that I haven't done.
Yeah, I just finished my second pre-order. It was
Mm-hmm.
on second was on Indiegogo. First was on a Kickstarter. I did it for my post-apocalyptic story RPG game. 10 years after the virus pandemic, like
Mm-hmm.
year. It's called year 2023, and it went quite okay. Before the podcast, we were talking a little bit, and
Mm-hmm.
in some video a long time ago, you were saying that you would like to do professionally games.
Mm-hmm.
Did you said also the Game Boy games?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of my direction is kind of the same, so we can talk about it, how it goes for you and how it goes for me.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah. Well, I think professionally, I do feel as though when you make a game, um, doing what you did with the Indiegogo campaign is probably a smarter idea than what I did, was just making a website and putting it on cartridge. Because I had to front all the money for that, and I haven't made it back yet because I haven't sold enough. And obviously, it was mainly for myself that I was doing that. So that isn't a very professional way of thinking. I think like you had a more professional way of thinking about it, where the people who want it pay for it so that you can then produce it for them. That makes a lot more sense professionally, I think.
Yeah, I must say the first campaign, I'm lucky
Mm-hmm.
because people, I guess, like my game, what I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
so they don't complain that much.
Yeah, yeah.
But
But that's I believe that's how it should work, right? You should make a game that people want, and then when they want it, then that justifies making it. If I was to make a bad game and nobody wanted to buy it, that's actually a good thing, right? Because that means that you can then improve the game or make a different game and not have to spend all the time trying to market it and sell it when it shouldn't be sold, right? It's kind of a litmus test for for knowing whether or not it's worth making.
yeah, now today, when I was starting the campaign, this crowdfunding campaign, today it's
Mm-hmm.
not working like crowdfunding, like you have a project, you put it there. It's not working anymore like this. It's more about marketing because
Yeah.
the crowdfunding campaign has some base of the people, and the people are searching projects similar to yours, so it's more
Yeah.
about marketing than crowdfunding. But yeah, my
Mm.
first crowdfunding campaign was horrible. It
Yeah.
went okay, it went perfectly, more than I expected, I must say, but the execution from my side was I think very bad. I was not prepared for nothing. Everything got stuck. It was horrible. But how I said, you can see really the people in this community are very special because I didn't get any like hate comments or anything like this. Like
Mm-hmm.
even I shipped the last game, I think 6 months after the campaign
Mm-hmm.
finished, and people even wrote me like, it's very good because you ship it so fast. So I don't know what is the standard in
Yeah,
other
yeah.
games,
I
but
think because I think that GB Studio or the Game Boy scene is a bit more. Is If you think about it in comparison to, like, I don't know, PS5 or PC gaming, then we we are singular people making art in a way. We're making things that don't make logical sense. We're not making the best game for as many people as we can. We're making very specific games for ourselves and people who like a similar thing. And because it's just us, it makes it more homemade. It makes it more special. And I think people understand that, and they they're kind to us in that sense. I agree that people are really nice in this community, and I think it's because it's tapping into that nostalgia factor, right? Like, people had a Game Boy when they were growing up, and you don't get them anymore. So what we're doing is helping them relive that, aren't we?
yeah, and I was very surprised that I expect I'm going to sell the most digital versions
Hmm.
of my game.
Yeah.
but maybe 70% was cartridges or full box with cartridges, physical versions.
Mm.
So that was surprise for me because I didn't expect people going to have a Game Boys to
Yeah,
play
yeah.
the game anymore. So it was very
I
good.
think that's a great sign that what we're doing is positive. I agree that obviously we put our games up on itch.io, and if you want to play it digitally, normally we can just play it in the browser, can't you? And I think owning it on cartridge physically is way more special. And I think that's the reason that they're in this community, right? Is for that specialness. You don't really get that in modern gaming, do you?
Yeah, how you said, for the nostalgia, because what I remember when I was younger, that you get the box, you look at the art of the box, you read the manual, you had some special poster or something in
Mm-hmm.
a box. So you basically start playing the game or being inside of the universe of the game before you even start the game.
Yeah, yeah, like reading the back and like understanding the characters a bit, or seeing the world that you'll be playing in. Definitely.
Yeah, so I am trying for this approach, and obviously people like it, so I am very happy.
Hmm. Yeah, that might be what I'm doing wrong with Take It Racing 2 selling it. I don't have it boxed. It's just the cartridge. I think the box does bring it up a completely new level, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's true. But between us, between the developers, it's very expensive. The
Yes,
just
yes.
print the custom box, it's
Hmm.
crazy expensive. And then
Yeah, I did try and do it, but I remember that to print on card, obviously you need a good printer, but the box net itself, the shape of the box is slightly bigger than A4, isn't it? So that
yes,
means you
it's
need an A3 printer in order to print the boxes, which obviously is very expensive and I don't have.
yeah, it's crazy. I have also the manual, and the manual
Hmm.
is a custom dimensions, and
Hmm.
that's it. This is really. It's, I didn't
Yeah.
expect to sell so much physical copies because they are so expensive, and but it went very good.
Do you have any other games in the making?
So yeah, I'm just developing new game. It's going to be called Luftgears. It's going to
Okay.
be a little bit different game again. The first game, the year 2031, I kind of went what people want, because on the Game Boy, people usually want interesting RPG with interesting story. So I did some kind of research, and the Zelda and Pokemons were top games. So the second game is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be like you have actually a very similar game on each, or even more games than one, from the space, where you have your
Hmm.
spaceship and you are traveling
Yes.
around the space. So this is going to be like roguelike. I would like the player to develop a relationship with his ship, maintain
Hmm.
the ship, visit other planets. So let's see. And I also want it to be highly focused on art, like pixel art. And
Mm.
this is maybe first time I actually saying it. I would like to release also comics with the game in a physical release,
That's a fun idea.
based on
Yeah.
the world of the, because how I said, I would like, when I'm releasing the physical release, I would like to have like more experience for the player thanks to the physical release. So
Mm.
I'm looking at it from this side.
That's a great idea. Yeah. Um, I know that there are other people who are like making things that accompany their games, and I do think that when obviously Pokemon is a great example that like it started as a game and then it turned into an anime or a cartoon or whatever, right? And that kind of feeling is perfect for the Game Boy. I feel like the pixels are suggestive of things and lets you fill in, the blanks. And by being creative outside of the pixel art and doing comics or artwork or whatever, it does like build a feeling, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's for me, it's what I would like to have. And so I kind of hope other people would like to have it also.
Mm. Yeah, I was thinking about making like card games as well. Obviously, I studied game development, and we had a couple of projects that were, physical games like board games or whatever. Um, and I kind of always had that feeling that like board games and card games, there's something extra to them, like holding things in your hand and sitting across from other people. That's an extra layer, and I think that I want to mix my physical game, or like I want to mix my Game Boy games with physical games. I started developing, the Rosebud and the Bicycle, that game where you're riding a bike around a town or whatever. And I was going to make it originally as like a card game in GB Studio, but the complications of that I could not figure out. So I kind of took the ideas from that and took it outside of the Game Boy, and then left that game to be a Game Boy game. But I still haven't forgotten those card game aspects. And I think there is something special that is missing that we need to explore. And like you said about your interests being making a comic, you should definitely explore it, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I was even thinking, because the Game Boy, like generally every game developer, as small as us, I don't think it's possible to live from this. You need to have at least one
Yeah,
kind of hit game to
yeah.
survive. And especially on a Game Boy, it's very limited. So I
Hmm.
was actually even thinking to do some board game or something like this based on my Game Boy game world and stuff like this also, because
Yeah, I do think that's a good idea.
yeah.
Yeah, I do think that board games have the possibility to break out further, I think, but it would require somebody to do it to know, right? Um, I think as well, there have been a couple of Game Boy games that seem to have broken beyond the hobby sphere. That game, I think it's called Dragonborn. Is that the game that went onto Steam? And I had loads of articles written about it. And I don't know how much money it made the developer, but I can imagine it went quite well. And yeah, you're right. Unless you get a very, very popular game, making a living is quite difficult. I actually made a lot of my money from making games for other people privately, like businesses. That's how I made some money as a GB Studio developer, not from selling my own games, which is kind of sad.
Oh, you are right. And there is also, for example, the game Shapeshifter from a
Mm,
Japanese developer. I have a friend who lives in Japan. He works in a game shop, and he told
okay.
me that, for example, the Shapeshifter also have a Japanese language in the game. And the friend told me that in Japan is absolutely like completely different game culture than here in Europe or
Okay.
US. That you can clear like that you can very easily see people in a metro, in tram, to still playing the Game Boy games. And there is a lot of developers, and they are releasing a lot of new games, like real
Wow.
studios who are still
Mm,
developing and releasing kind of these kind of games.
that's really cool. Maybe we should be thinking about that. We should be making games for Japan.
Yeah, I was thinking, but yeah, my first game, the year 2031, now in this moment is only in English, and
Hmm.
I was thinking maybe to translate it to Spanish, but
Hmm.
it's so much work. It has like
Yeah, yeah.
40,000 words. So
Hmm.
in the end, I said no.
Yeah, yeah. I think you would have to start designing the game with that in mind, wouldn't you?
Exactly.
You'd have to use that into the contingency of you're deliberately designing this game so that it can be translated easily. If you made like an arcade game or something simpler with less text, it would be a lot easier, wouldn't it? Maybe that's how. Maybe the next game should be a smaller game, an
Yeah, no.
in-between game.
The next game I'm planning to, I'm already designing it for different languages.
Ah, very good.
Anyway, about your tutorials on your
Hmm.
YouTube, do you have some relation with the GB Studio, or you are just alone doing it?
Well, it's just me. It's just me making the videos. Obviously, I talk to some of the people who I guess actually I don't know if I'm talking to the people who make it or not. Obviously, it's open source, so people who are working on it may or may not be uh, as involved as I think they are, right? But obviously, as I've been around for so long and I've been making videos, people come to me and ask questions. And for example, you know, the GB Studio Central, I've talked to them in the past. I made a t-shirt design that's on their website. Um, and there are other people who, you know, made games in the sphere that I chat to sometimes, but it's just me making the videos. I'm not really influenced by anyone.
But I must say you have very good tutorials. Sometimes I check I check your tutorials to know what is your approach, and sometimes I
Mm.
even learn something from it.
Yeah, I think the most important thing about my tutorials really is seeing me work through an issue. Often, when I watched tutorials when I was working in Unity for my degree, I would just copy what they're doing, and they would never explain why they're doing it. So I kind of made sure that when I did it, I was telling you why and telling you alternate ways of fixing it, an issue as well. I hope that my tutorials are better than the tutorials I used to watch.
I think they are very good, and people who are watching and want to check the GB Studio, they should go and check your YouTube channel.
Mm.
About the business side of the game development, you said you study game development.
Yeah, yeah. So on my course, it was a 3 year course, and each year we'd work in teams and make a game. And in our final year, it was more business focused. The idea that we would, they kind of premised us with the idea that we had to pitch it to an investor and ask them for investment, which obviously is kind of a crazy idea that somebody would invest in a game because you can't really bet on it if you don't know what I'm saying. But basically, we had to, uh, present our games to our lecturers, and we got graded on it. We also had to like make spreadsheets of like how much money we'd be spending, you know, if we're paying ourselves as a salary, and like buying assets or whatever. But obviously, after university and doing this now, like I said, I've been working with clients. I've had to take it on as a business. Obviously, self-employed in the UK is what I'm doing. Um, so thinking like a business and thinking like a game developer is often at like opposite ends of the scale. We You have to think about how you're going to make money rather than make a piece of art that you are happy with, right? You can't waste time. You have to be efficient when you're a business. You can't fluff around and make pretty things. You have to think about who is your audience and how they're going to interact with the product. Um, and I do believe that game development is understanding when people play your game, what are they thinking, and then you have to make them think what you want them to think rather than to think something else. It can often be very difficult, but um, thinking like a business is important if you want to make money. Um, but it's not always what we want to do. And obviously, I've struggled with that in the past. But it comes in waves. You have to go back to the drawing board sometimes and refocus your efforts. You can't just hope when you're a business. You have to think about the future.
Yeah, I completely agree. You need to think about the time. For me,
Yeah.
it was very hard to release the game the year 2031. I was working on it 2.5 or 3 years,
Hmm.
and I had so much plans for it. It's supposed to be the best game ever, but after the 2 3 years of development, I said I really need to release the game
Hmm.
and even try if people likes it. Maybe they want to support me. So
Hmm.
it was really like this. I didn't
Yeah,
study game development, but I study the marketing and management. So I'm looking at it maybe from different point of view, but the same.
yeah. I
So
think you probably had a. I think the way you described it, like working on the game for a few years and then thinking, okay, I need to release it. That's how I was with Take It Racing 2. I overscoped the game and it was like my dream game. You know, I had all these cars. I'd spreadsheeted like 800 cars that I was thinking about adding into the game, you know. Uh, and then when came down to it, it was like, this will not ever be done if I don't, you know, focus and say, this has to be done, you know. And I had to then reshift what the game was in order to make sure that I could get it out. And you know, your education of marketing, I'm sure, helped you know that.
yeah, maybe. And I must say I was lucky
Yeah, maybe.
because on Kickstarter, my first campaign went very, very good. I must say it was double of my highest expectations. I don't know how I did it because I really don't know because other games are not so popular
Mm,
except a few.
yeah, yeah.
So I really don't know. I was lucky or something. I don't know.
I think that's a good way of thinking, though, is expecting it to fail, and then when it goes well, just reaping the rewards, right? I think it's more likely that you had a very realistic expectation of what it was going to be, so that when it came around to it and it went well, you were surprised, right? While other people might think, okay, this game has to perform well, therefore it will, and then be, you know, burnt by the fact it didn't go well. So I think you had probably the best way of it going, right?
Yeah, I was kind of realistic. Also, when you
Mm.
search on internet, how much is going to earn my first game,
Yeah,
everybody is going to tell you zero.
zero. Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
So
I think my first ever game I made. Obviously, it was in probably in uni that I made it, but I don't even remember what it was. It was so bad. Yeah, it's important to make multiple games in order to get better at making games. Right? It's a skill. It's not just you don't just instantly get good at it. Maybe you could say you're lucky, but um, obviously you probably had the skills beforehand to do it. What did you do before making games?
I was doing just personal project. This was my first even a public game because we before the pandemic we bought a van with my now wife and
Hmm.
we wanted to travel and I was thinking what I gonna do in a van
Yeah,
where like I cannot just drive or lay on the beach all day.
yeah, yeah.
So I found a GB studio and I start making kind of I was thinking what I gonna do first. I cannot do videos, vlogs because I'm very bad on a video. I cannot do blogs because I don't know how to write properly.
Hmm.
So what I gonna do? So I start making like vlogs and blogs in the game, and I started calling it glogs, like game logs.
Hmm.
And every day when something interesting happen, I try to put it into the game, into the like level, one level of the
Mm.
game, and I learned a lot on this because
Yeah,
every day was something different and I try to create every day new kind of mechanic, game mechanic, and I learn a lot. If someone doesn't know how to start with game development, try to make something like this. It is very helpful.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Like with when I made my first game in GB Studio, I just wanted it to be a story game about cowboys, and obviously I wanted to, you know, shoot off a standoff where the characters shoot each other, but I had no idea how to do that. So I had to, you know, come up with this weird way of like, obviously the two sprites stood opposite each other, and then the player presses a button, and then the screen goes black for a second, and then when it lights up again, one of the characters is dead, right? Just something even as simple as that. If you haven't done it before, you're not going to know how to do it, and so you have to test it, don't you?
Yeah, just try to put into the game your idea, just try to put it in any way to the game, and
Hmm.
slowly you're just gonna get better.
Yeah, and like you said about you didn't know how to, you weren't confident on camera, or you didn't know how to write. I obviously would feel the same way, but I feel like me doing it made me better at it. My first videos on my channel are awful. I didn't know how to talk to the camera, and I would stumble over my words constantly, and I'd sit there for 5 minutes trying to think of my next line, and it was awful. I had to get better at it by doing it, but if I hadn't have done it, then I wouldn't be where I am now. I think that just by trying is where you succeed.
Yeah, that's important. Just try.
Hmm.
That's also one of the reason why maybe you don't see it, but the people see it. I am just recording on the Game Boy camera to get a little bit more comfortable before, and the lighting and everything is not that important for the Game Boy camera than everything else. So I
Yeah,
slowly get into it.
that's good. Yeah. What's something that surprised you about the community, or what's something that you're really happy about in the community? I think you already touched upon it though, of like how nice people are. You know how with my tutorials, like I was saying, I don't think they're that good. Sometimes, obviously, a lot of them are quite outdated now because GB Studio keeps getting updated. Um, but people are constantly so nice, and they're always so thankful that I've done anything, And I think it's such a special community to be a part of, where people are just thankful for you being in it with them.
Yeah, what for me, it's I expected some negativity because
Mm,
I'm just sitting here alone. I gave like I don't have much experience with the game development, so I expect people just trash my game.
hmm.
But people are writing me and even supporting me a lot, and they are saying that it's very good game. Even what really surprised me when they discover people who wanted to support me on Kickstarter from the beginning. They discovered I'm from Spain. I live in Spain, and for example, they are in Madrid or somewhere here in Spain. They start asking me, "Oh yeah, and can you send me your physical copy of the game with your signature?"
That's nice.
Like
Yeah.
I am no one, but it's really nice.
Yeah.
It was very nice, and it was a lot of people like this writing me that they really like my game. They even try to share my content so they can like they try to promote my game. It's very nice
Mm,
from this community.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. People are just really nice. Like on itch.io, I don't think I've ever got a negative comment. I think people are always very constructive, and that they want to help you, right? And if anyone's listening, there's a developer that's wanting to be a developer, a beginner, just know that people are on your side, right? And that, like we said before, that if you don't start, then you'll never succeed. You have to try and test out new things, and one of those is putting yourself out there. You have to, be part of something, be part of the community in order to grow yourself, your games, and the community.
Yes, I think the most important for anyone who is creating something, game developers, I learned it in my previous technical job,
Mm-hmm.
that that your product must be so good that you are willing to buy it from yourself for the money you are asking.
Mm.
That is my philosophy of it must be so good that I want to buy it for this money. And
Mm-hmm.
that I think is very very important in everything, not only in game development.
That's a good way of thinking, yeah. And also, you have to, when you're thinking about that, you have to remember that there will be some people who won't like it, and the often thing is that they'll click off it, they won't leave a comment, right? That's another reason why you only might get a positive comments, is because everybody who didn't like it didn't waste their time by sending you a hate comment or, whatever. They just left, and that's completely fine. That you don't have to appeal to everybody, and as long as it appeals to you and that small audience, then you've succeeded, haven't you?
So you are right in everything what you said. And thank you for coming to talk.
Thank you.
Maybe we can prepare some topics for the next time if people are going to
definitely.
like it.
Yeah, good idea. If people want to hear about stuff, they should leave it in the comments.
And we're going to say goodbye for now. So, adios.
Bye-bye.